What's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a while since I've made a purely East focused video, which kinda hurts to say considering I'm striving to be, the East guy. And yeah, you probably know it's been taking up a lot of my time, but that's besides the point. As you know, a re-release of East 10 titled East 10 Proud Nordics is set to release sometime this year. I personally think it'll drop sometime this summer, but that's besides the point. There's not a ton we know about the re-release as of right now. The only thing Falcom stated was that they were rebalancing the game from the ground up, and that it will apparently feel like a completely new game. That could honestly mean a whole bunch of stuff, but what really matters is that some changes are going to be made to East 10, and these changes have got to be major enough to make people want to pick up the game again. So, in this video, I want to talk about some changes and improvements that I like to see in Proud Nordics, ranging from combat changes, quality of life stuff, new game plus features, just things in general that'll hopefully make me proud enough to pick up another copy. So enough with the intro, let's get straight to it. So the first thing I feel like needs adjusting for Proud Nordics is the ship. Not the combat or anything, I feel like it's just fine as is. It may be a bit simple, but it's fun, and that's what really matters. What isn't fun is sailing around like a snail during the first few chapters of the game. You've probably heard this point countless times by now. But yeah, the ship is noticeably slow during the start of the game. There's obviously reasons for this, of course. For one, if your ship was fast from the start of the game, the upgrades you get over time wouldn't feel nearly as impactful, and honestly, gradually feeling the speed of your ship increase during a first playthrough is really satisfying. The ship was probably made slow to start out just to make the surrounding waters in the beginning of the game feel larger and more grand in scale. Even with all that in mind, you can't deny the fact that sailing around the ocean in like the first 3 chapters is a total drag. Well, looking back at least. On a first playthrough, where everything's all new and exciting, you don't really care about the speed of the ship, cause you're just trying to explore as much as you can. However, if you decide to go through a second playthrough and have to go back to the base ship with no upgrades, that slowness becomes real noticeable real quick. Honestly, all of this could be alleviated with 2 things. First, Falcom could make the boost gauge refill a bit faster from the start of the game. Making the base speed of the ship faster without boosting could also work, but I feel like a faster refill gauge might be the route they take. But if not that, at the very least, let the ship upgrades carry over into New Game Plus. Honestly, the only real downside of doing another playthrough is having the ship go back to being slow. I mean, New Game Plus lets you carry over practically everything else, so why not the ship upgrades too? Kinda feels like a no-brainer if you ask me. Aside from the ship, there's also some general gameplay changes that I'd really like to see. The first thing being how guarding works. Don't get me wrong, the revenge gauge system is really fun for what it's worth. It's a good upgrade from the flash guard and dodge mechanics from the party system games. However, for Proud Nordics, if they really want to go all out on making the game feel different, changing how guarding works will go a long way. Personally, I think Falcom should make the window for getting a perfect guard smaller, depending on the difficulty. Basically, the window for a perfect guard gets smaller and smaller as you go up from Hard, Nightmare, and Inferno. A change like that would make the game feel more challenging in a totally different way from just having everything hit like a truck. And on top of just changing how guarding works depending on what difficulty you pick, I think the enemies in general need a change. I only really noticed this after playing through the game a few times, but at certain points, it feels like the bosses hardly fight back. You really end up just completely bullying some of them until they go down. Not every boss fight is like that, mind you, but majority of the mini bosses and a few of the major bosses kinda just stand there and let you attack. I know they made the combat of East 10 a bit slower to contrast with the previous party system games, which was probably a good thing because I don't think making things faster than East 9 would have been a good idea, but some of the bosses feel surprisingly slow and sluggish. I don't think making the game faster in general would fix the issue though. I think just making the bosses move and act faster, or at the very least attack more often, is the way to go. Basically, keep player speed the same, but increase the speed of some of the bosses at least a little bit. Cause seriously, some bosses go down way too easily if you know what you're doing. Letting them attack more often would definitely make fights way more engaging and even more fun than what they are now. And speaking of bosses, the next thing I want to see changed in Proud Nordics is enemy variety, specifically the mini bosses. the Puppet Krieger. Aside from these fights just being kinda easy, most, if not all of the Puppet Krieger kinda look the exact same. I understand that they're the townspeople who were turned into Krieger, but all of them being the same and not having a single distinction between them is a little crazy. I don't expect them to make every single Puppet Krieger unique though, that'd be even more insane. However, it would be cool if specific Puppet Krieger had some sort of distinction about them to signify who they were before they got turned into a Krieger. I don't think it's too much of a huge thing to ask. On top of that, and this is kinda related to my previous point, these mini bosses should not be as easy as they are. The Puppet Krieger definitely need new attacks in Proud Nordics. The same goes for certain major bosses too, because once you understand their patterns, things get really repetitive, especially if you're fighting them again on a second playthrough. They kinda end up doing the same thing over and over again. So yeah, the bosses having more attack variety, and also attacking more in general, would make fights way more interesting, especially on repeat playthroughs. My next point is more of a personal thing honestly, but in Proud Nordics, I think it'd be really great if they let you zoom the camera out more. The game just feels noticeably zoomed in at times, even with the slider at max, which for some reason only goes to 65%. You might be wondering why this is even an issue. The camera in East 10 is honestly fine as is. You hardly ever have to fight with the camera. However, the reason I want to be able to zoom the camera out is to be able to see the character I'm not controlling run behind or alongside me. This was something that kinda bugs me ever since I first played the game in 2023. For being a game that's focused on two specific characters during gameplay, it's kinda odd to be running around with the other character just off camera like 70% of the time. Again, this is kinda just a personal thing I want, and honestly, it's starting to feel like I'm just complaining about nothing. But I really feel like it'd be so much cooler if you could zoom the camera out enough to see both characters constantly during gameplay. For instance, during the whale chase scene, can you imagine how much cooler that whole event would have been if you could see Karjamana riding behind Aro the whole time? And even when you're just running through a field, the character you aren't controlling tends to be off screen a lot of the time. Although that's more due to the AI just not running at the same speed as the player. That's also something they could adjust. Not to mention, going off of what's on the website for Proud Nordics, assuming I'm not wrong and a complete dumbass, we might be getting a third playable character sometime down the line. If that's the case, more camera space and visibility is practically a necessity at this point. There's a good chance that the screen is going to feel crazy overcrowded if they add another character into the mix. Man, I really hope we get more info on Proud Nordics soon. If we are getting another party member, I really want to know who it is. I hope their design is cool, at the very least. And speaking of design, that kinda ties into the next thing I want to talk about. If Falcom is treating Proud Nordics as a completely new game, and if they want people to feel like it's a new game, the easiest way to do that is to have new art. I really do love the art we got by Toy 8 for East 10, but I kinda wish we got more. This art style is really nice, and the key visuals we did end up getting were great. Along with that, the character portraits and the art from the runestones are really nice too. This might sound a bit greedy, but if Falcom really wants to go all out on the "this is basically a new game" thing, new art is definitely needed. I don't just mean updated character art for Adar and Karja in the menus or stuff like that. I'm talking stuff like completely new box art that isn't just the key visual they used for Proud Nordics. I really do like this specific art, and honestly I feel like it should have been the box art of the base game. But no, I don't think they should use this again. People have seen this already. If you slap it onto Proud Nordics, I'm sure some people won't even be able to tell that it's not the base game. So yeah, new box art would be really cool. I'm sure Toy 8 can do something really amazing when it comes to box art, cause the art for the base game, while it is nice, doesn't feel like it's as good as it could be. If Proud Nordics gets brand new box art, I really hope it's on par with the box art from East 9. Cause even now, I still think it's the coolest in the series. Aside from that though, an idea I have that I think would be really cool is changing the character portraits. You know how when you're out at sea and listening to the crew conversations, a static portrait appears next to the text? Well, how about they just use sprites? You know, like in East vs. Trails. Instead of just one static picture for dialogue, have multiple sprites with various expressions. I kinda feel like having character sprites would make the game feel significantly different. Although, as much as I really want this, I don't think it has a very good chance of happening. Still though, I do really hope we get some new art for Proud Nordics. I guess the last thing I'll talk about here is the music. I mean, it's practically confirmed we'll get new music anyways. There's no way they can just reuse music for a completely new island, right? Right? But yeah, I'm really hyped to hear some new music. I really want to hear more songs from Kaguchi, man. I ended up listening to a few of his tracks from the Daybreak games, and oh my god, man, that guy is constantly cooking. And the songs we got from him in East 10 were amazing too, even if the placements of said songs were a bit questionable. I'm honestly really excited to not only explore that new island, but hear what music is going to play with it. As you know, music is a pretty big part of every East game. Well, every Falcom game in general. So of course I'm hyped to hear new songs. And speaking of songs, this is the actual last thing I want to mention. Falcom, please, for the love of the goddesses, give Proud Nordics an opening. If you want this to feel like a brand new game, if you want people to feel like this is a completely new and fresh experience, if you want people to be proud about buying the game again, give the game a proper opening. We technically did get an opening of sorts in the base game, which is a step up from East 9 not having anything at all. Although if they really want to go above and beyond, just give us a proper opening. You don't even have to make a brand new song at this point. Just use "And the Adventure Begins" and I'll be happy. At the same time, if there is an opening in Proud Nordics, there's a good chance we might get our first government-mandated single opening for East. And yeah, that's pretty much everything I had to say. While I really did enjoy East 10, there's definitely some aspects of the game that, after looking back, feel kinda weird. But now that the game is getting a re-release, it's the perfect chance for Falcom to adjust and add on to the game to make it even better. And going off of how they described Proud Nordics, I'm hopeful that this re-release will make me proud enough to own yet another copy of the game. And if there's anything about the game you think could be improved that I didn't mention, feel free to talk about it in the comments. Anyways, that's all for me. If you enjoyed, feel free to leave a like or subscribe. Alright, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.